This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today.
Hey, what's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Ensign's Chair. This episode, I want to talk about the Gambody Reliant. Now, I am doing some heavy modifications of this model because it's highly inaccurate. There's a lot of inaccuracies with it. Don't get me wrong. If you want to do a Reliant model, it comes in 1/350 as the standard printing size, and you can print it on most printers that are similar to the Photon Mono X in size. I don't know about smaller than that, but I know these files should pretty much fit on that. However, I don't want to stop at 1/250 or 1/350. I'm moving this up to 1/250, which is what I estimate the scale of this model is going to be. Here is the pylon, or the nacelle, or one of the nacelles I printed up so far. This is give you an idea of what the scale of this is going to be. It's going to be huge. I've done a lot of work with this as far as modifications and hollowing a lot of it out, because otherwise this thing will go through a ton of resin if you don't hollow it out. It's a pretty solid model. Here is the weapons pod for size comparison for the top. And so I'm working on modifying this to make it more accurate. We'll talk more about that when I get into it. I do want to do kind of an overview of the model as it comes for those of you that may be interested in getting the Gambody files and putting this together as is. So I'll go through a couple things with that. Hopefully this won't get too long-winded. It might be a little boring at times as I scroll through stuff. But bear with me. Give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, guys. So let's start off by, and I've never done the screen record before, so we'll see how this works. But let's start off by talking about the standard version, kind of a review of what the Gambody file is. I don't want to take too much time on it because I don't want to bore everybody to death. But basically, if you're interested in this model, if you've been looking at it and thinking about printing it, I'll just give you a brief overview of it. But it does, I will say, for the most part, obviously it resembles the Reliant, but there are some pretty bad inaccuracies on it, and I've seen people say that I've seen at least one person say that maybe it was because they didn't want to get any lawsuits or that from Paramount. But the thing is, they're calling it the Reliant. That's probably a bigger risk than making it look accurate to the Reliant in the movie. But I don't think these few inaccuracies are just to avoid a lawsuit, because I don't think that's quite going to do it. But there's some pretty bad inaccuracies on here. Most of you, if you've been in the Star Trek models, you'll spot them right away. But we'll just go down and look at the assembly. So you do get two versions of this. You get this top one is kind of a reminiscent of the 1537 Enterprise refit model, in that it's got this textured Aztec pattern, and your registry is embossed on this as well. I'm obviously not doing that. I'm going for the smooth, which is down below, and I am going to, or planning to, either paint Aztecs on it, or work at getting some decals done up by Gus over at GCals. So I got to send him a section and let him scale it and all that, and I've already talked with him about that. So we're going to look at least doing a set of decals, if not looking at trying to do a set of Aztec painting masks. So we'll see. We'll see what Gus can come up with and see what we can put our heads together with and work out. But this is how the whole saucer, forward saucer section goes together. You've got individual, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 5 sections, and you've got these little tabs that you also print up. And that's how a lot of these sections go together. You use these tabs, and it holds these sections together and in proper alignment. So that's a good thing. It helps you get these lined up properly instead of taking the chance of one section being off from the other. I have not used those yet. I haven't really gotten into this part yet, but a lot of these sections where I'm redoing it, I've eliminated these just because I don't feel I really need them, but they're there and they do help. I may keep them in this section because this is probably the section that will be the least number of changes that I will have to make to it, is the forward saucer section. Everything else looks like I'm going to have to do quite a bit of modification to it. Again, just a shot of those tabs. And there's some inaccuracies. I'll talk about those when I go back and look at what I'm going to be doing as far as making changes on this. But just to give you kind of an idea of how this goes together, it's all tabbed. And then there's your forward section of the hull, of the saucer section anyway. And this is just the same thing, just showing you. I don't know why they need to show you with the textured hull. It's the same assembly sequence and result. And then you've got your back section here that goes together in a couple different sections. Now, I will say that I am printing this larger. I think I'm doing it at 140% of the original file size. The original file size will print you a 1/350 scale, and excuse me, at 140%, I believe this is going to be, I've estimated to be about 1/250. But when you print this, if you print this at standard scale, you can definitely easily print this in something like a Photon Mono X size 3D printer. Some of these sections, so far everything I've printed on this, which isn't much, I've printed on my Photon Mono X. And no issue. The only thing that I have had to print is the grills for the nacelles, because I want to do them all in one piece. But other than that, most of this, especially at 1/350, like I said, the standard file size, you should be able to print this on the Photon Mono X similar size printer easily, because these parts do break down enough to fit them on that size of a printer plate. So again, pretty much how it goes together. These are, for the most part, these are set up. These holes are all open. These windows are all open for you to light. All these windows are open. There are a couple of spots for additional lighting, but there's a lot of spots where I've had to open it up myself because the lighting is just lacking as far as marker lights. For example, these lights back here under the shuttle bay are not opened up for lighting, so you would have to do that yourself. I don't recall if there was a hole here already or not for these. There is now, because I know I put one there if there wasn't, but there's supposed to be a light here as well in these triangles. I don't recall if that was open or not, but this is how it all goes together. And let me slide down here, and then this is your lower assembly going together, and that's all your back and your lower assembly together. And again, here's your upper assembly now. Again, these tabs go in place. This part here, you're going to want to print and clear. And I'll talk about this dome, this impulse dome here in a little bit. But you're going to want to print this in clear if you're going to want to light this impulse dome, because otherwise you won't be able to unless you do some modifications to it like I'm going to do, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you're also going to have to print this back part in clear. If you want to light the impulse engines. And here is your bridge, your BC deck and bridge going into place. And it does come with an internal bridge that you can display, but it's terrible. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm sorry. I'm not downing the person that made this model, because I appreciate anybody that makes them, but there was no real effort put into this bridge module. It looks nothing like the Reliant bridge, and at 1/350 scale, it's not that hard to do. I'll show you mine here once we get to some of the modifications I've made. Here's your upper weapons pod. Again, just your tabs go together, And I do believe if you're going to want to light these photon tubes up, you're going to have to open these. Well, actually, they look like they're open in this. I haven't printed these yet, but they look like they're open in this image. So they should already be open. And here's your wing assembly and your pylon, which, again, I don't want to get into too much about the details, the changes I'm making, until I go through this real quick and just show you the basic assembly. Your nacelle goes together in 4 different parts. Again, you can print this easily. You should be able to print this easily on a Photon Mono X. As far as the grills fitting on a Photon Mono X, I'm not sure. I think they will fit at standard file size. I think they'll fit. I know that when I enlarged these to 140%, I had to print these on my M3 Plus or my M3 Max because they would not fit on the Mono X. But I think they'll fit on the standard size. Will fit on a Photon Mono X. But again, here's how your assembly goes together, and your wing goes together there. Now, I will say, when you go to print these off the website, the names are very confusing. They refer to these as turbines instead of nacelles. And then you've got this whole assembly as your wing, and they're labeled as A, B, C, D, E, and it's real confusing at times, some of the names they used for these parts. It's almost like the person that did it, I don't want to say they didn't know what they were talking about when they labeled them, because obviously if the person built this model, I would hope they were at least somewhat of a Star Trek fan. It does come with a base that you can print and make as well, and that's how it would appear after you mount it. But so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the standard file. And I mean, it's a decent model. If you want something that resembles the Reliant, that you're gonna be able to look at and say, oh, that's the Reliant, this model will work. But for me, I've decided to go in and change a lot of things and heavily modify this file. And we'll talk about those changes now in case you're interested. So the saucer section I haven't really done anything with yet, but I will tell you that if you look at this corner here, this is supposed to be the thruster, the RCS thruster. That is not. That's just a triangle. That's all that's there. There's no holes for lighting. It's not even proper. It's just a raised triangle that was placed here, and it's definitely not correct to the saucer section. Now, so far, that's really the only change I've seen. I may take these phaser banks out and do them. Excuse me, may do them later on, but this thruster is the only thing right now I've seen so far on the saucer section. I'm definitely going to have to redo. It's way off. And let's skip through all this. I'm not using any of the textured parts. Now, the back section. The modifications I've done to this. There is, let me get down here a little bit where you get a better picture of it. All right, so I think there's a different picture here I can show you. Yeah. Anyway, on this back section, so you're supposed to have, you've got these 2 triangles that have a light in the middle, and there's supposed to be a light in the middle over top of the shuttle bay, and then you've got these ones on either side of the corners. So these are here, but they are not opened up for lighting. I have opened those up for lighting, and I've also added the missing light above the shuttle bay. And if these weren't already open, they are open now. The other issue is this corner here, these vents, is what I'm guessing they're supposed to be, are not open, and I wanted those open for lighting, so I have gone in and opened those vents up. And let me see if I've got that. Not there, here. Let me actually do a side-by-side here. All right, and let's see on my model here. Yeah, I don't have that back section on here yet. I haven't finished modifying it, but this is just a mock-up assembly on the right that you see here of what I've modified so far. So I've done those 2 changes. added that light, opened these vents up, and that's pretty much it to this back section. Also, this shuttle bay door is incorrect. It's kind of corrugated looking. It's got these grooves in it, and it's meant to be, they want you to print it transparent. I'm sure that's just so you can see inside the shuttle bay, but this should be smooth. So when I go to do this, it will be made smooth. I won't have these little lines, these grooves in this like they've got in theirs. And yeah, that's it for that section there. This bottom part here, this section here, I was thinking I was got to print in clear, but this dome on the bottom here actually does not light up on the studio model. There's just a small light that's kind of a flashing or blinking light in the middle here. That's all it is. Even though this looks like it should light up, it doesn't. It's just a light in the middle here that blinks off and on. So I will modify this anyway because this dome is incorrect, and I'll talk about that more on the top side. But let's see, that's your bottom. The lower sensor dome looks like I may not have to do much with it, if anything. Worst comes to worst, I've got a STL file just for this lower sensor dome. It's meant for the refit, but I should be able to modify it, make it work for this Reliant if I need to, but I'm going to take a closer look at it. All right, this top part here, I am going to print in clear, but I'm going to have to modify this dome because it's way incorrect. These supports that come up to this center circle on top of the dome are way too wide, and it just doesn't look right. So I've got an aftermarket STL that I'm going to take this out and then put that in its place, and that'll be way more accurate than this. And that'll be all I have to do to this part. Some of these top parts here, this is textured by the way up top, and that's fine because on the studio model there is some texture to it up here. I think this might be a little deeper of a groove than what's on the studio model, but I'm not too worried about that. So I can leave that alone. All these bits and pieces in here may not be 100% accurate to the studio model, but I'm not too worried about that. That's not something that most people are going to look at and be like, oh, that's incorrect. That's mainly what I'm looking to correct on this model, or things that are obvious. If somebody wants to look at it, they could say, if anybody with any, decent amount of knowledge on the Reliant looks at it, and they'd be able to tell the difference. All right, so a lot of work on this BC deck. I took this whole BC deck out, and I had an aftermarket STL. I think I got off a Thingiverse or one of those. And I just scaled it properly, dropped it in place, made a few modifications to where the window placement was, because you see on this the windows are down here, which is totally wrong. And matter of fact, let me do the side by side again on this, and you can see. Come on, if I can get this to pop up properly. There we go. And you can kind of see here what I did with this. For one, this bridge is totally incorrect. It's way too short. It's kind of stubby and fat looking. There's no way I can think about to describe it. There's no openings for lighting down here. You can see this bridge, I've modified it. It has the proper lighting openings. The back side of this BC deck was way too high. It didn't have any, I don't think it had any window openings. It may have, but either way they were incorrect. This model here, and I've actually redone this back section to open these windows up more, because you can see there was a piece that was blocking these windows on the inside. I've removed that since I did this. So this is now correct, but this is showing the first draft of this, which still had the windows partially blocked. I did go in and add a grill that is more correct than what's on the model that comes with it. The model that comes with it is just way off. And yeah, I think it just looks a lot better. The profile, I think, is closer to what it should be than what comes with the model. And I actually made this to where, I don't know if it was one of the files that had this off already, or if I modified it so the dome would come off and I can use an internal bridge, which I have completely redone. Matter of fact, let me grab it real quick. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this or not. Let's see if I can go back to my camera. But here is the Reliant bridge. I don't know if the camera will focus. Well, somewhat. I've got my light on, so it should be, and there you go. You can see the bridge there. I've totally redone. I mean, it's hard to tell without it being painted, but it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty damn close. If you look at it, you'd be hard pressed to pick out what was wrong with it. These are some of the parts. While I've got this on my desktop, these are some of the parts I've already modified. I've pretty much got this one nacelle smoothed out. The seams look pretty good on it. I'm working on this front end still. I've modified this heavily. There were some ribs on the underside of the nacelle that I took off. The back section was not opened up for lighting, so I've opened up the ports for these RCS thrusters and for the strobe on the top back. Also, these come with the Reliant registry embossed on these, and there's no option for a non-embossed version, so I had to sand that off. And on these on the front, there's no fins on these grills on the front. It's just a smooth piece. So I had to modify that and add these fins in, which my camera doesn't look like it wants to focus very well, but I almost had it. Come on. I'm using this OBS Studio. I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. My old one I was using had a slider for me that adjusts the focus, but I don't see that on here. But anyway, the fins are on there. I've opened this up for lighting, and they had the spotlights on the front here just like on the refit, which is incorrect. You have 2 lights on the top edge is where they're supposed to be. So I've modified that to correct that, and they had these inset grills the same on both sides, which they're not supposed to be. You're supposed to have one that's got the wider ribbing for the inside that lights up. And then I've redone the outside so that it's correct and it's concaved like it should be. So those are modified already. And these parts I printed, but I have not modified them yet. This is the pylon, and I'll show you, it just slides into place. If I can get the wire out the way. It just slides into place like that. So it fits real good. The only issue with this is, again, this has the raised registry on it, and there's no option to print this without it. It has it on the inside and on the outside. And it's also got this paneling texture on it, which is incorrect if you're trying to keep it close to the studio model. This should be smooth. So I'm going to have to sand all this off. I may go in later and modify it in Tinkercad and take it off so I don't have to keep sanding it every time I have to reprint one of these. But I'm just going to sand this off. It's not very thick, so it should sand off pretty easy. And this wing, which at first I thought I wasn't going to have to do anything with, now that I look at it, this is ribbed on the inside. This is supposed to be smooth. These shouldn't be ribbed on inside here. So I'm going to have to smooth this out. And also this shape isn't quite correct. It's supposed to be kind of a lightning bolt shape. It's not quite right. So I may have to make some adjustments to that. In addition, it's supposed to be on the underside here, and it's not. It's missing from the underside. You can see that. It's just completely smooth. So this needs to be smoothed out, maybe reconfigured a little bit, and then added to the bottom as well. So I've got some work to do there. And this is the top of the weapons pod, which for the most part isn't too bad. There's a couple of things that are off on it. This here shouldn't be quite as wide. It should be narrower. I don't know if I'm going to mess with that or not, though. And this part back here is a little bit off. This should come up a little more in kind of an elliptical shape, indentation right here. But it's not too bad. It's not too far off as compared to some of the other parts I've had to deal with. But we'll take a look at whether or not to change that. Let me go back to my comparisons here. And so as far as this, the bridge BC deck, you can see the changes I've made to that. I think it looks a lot better. The window placement's correct, or at least pretty damn close. And the other thing that's way off on this is you can see these parts here, these sensors are way wrong. They look nothing like what they're supposed to look like, but you can see on here that I have corrected that. These are more correct, more accurate to what they should be. So that is another change that I've made. The only thing I have not done yet is you can see this little piece still sticks out from the old one. I haven't decided if I'm going to try to fix that in here, or if it's just something I'm going to do after I print it, just go through and putty and sand and re-etch the grid line. That's probably what I'll end up doing, because I think it's going to be easier than trying to change this in Tinkercad. I don't have enough experience in dealing with Tinkercad in order to make that change in it. So I think I'm going to just do it after I get everything printed. Here is the weapons pod. Again, I already talked about the change I got to make to that. The underside of this also, it doesn't show it in this diagram, but there should be 2 openings towards the front here where there's light coming out of. So I'm working on adding those now. Other than that, the weapons pod isn't too far off. This section here, sorry, I had to, my cats are back. I don't know if you hear them, but they're growling at each other. Then the cell I pretty much talked about what I've had to do to that as far as making it more accurate and correct. So I pretty much got that worked out. And let's see what else we got here. The grills I've talked about. So I don't want to make this too long. I just want to do a quick introduction and talk about, if you're interested in this Gambody file, what some of the inaccuracies are on it, so you know what you're getting if you buy the file. I think the file is about 30 or 35 bucks. I caught it on sale on Black Friday, so I don't know what it is now, but I think it costs about 30 or 35 bucks. It's a pretty straightforward assembly. Again, if you're just looking for something that resembles the Reliant, sure, go for it. It's a decent model. If you're looking for something that's a little more accurate, you got a lot of work to do. I've been asked whether or not I would sell these files. The answer to that is no. These are Gamebody's files. Even though I've made modifications to it, it's still basically their same files, and I don't get into the whole selling somebody else's work and somebody else's property. So unfortunately, I won't be able to do that. The only thing I might be able to do is if I work out to where I can offer these modifications to somebody that's interested in doing this, but with the modified parts, I might be able to work out the modified parts. But some of these, the changes are so drastic that it's going to be kind of hard to do. I would have to go back and rework a lot of stuff in order to make these to where they would work with the model as is. But I'll look at that. If I can do the modifications that I'm making and make it to where I can just offer the modifications, that may be something I do later. But right now, it's just not going to be possible, just because the modifications are so in depth. I mean, just for example, that when I changed out the sensor on the sides here, these sensors, well, a lot of modification had to be done to this front section here where the windows are. As a matter of fact, just to let you know, if you get this model, you see these windows that are lit right here? They're the only windows that are open to light on the front. All these other ones are not open. And I had to go in and, let me pull it up again. I had to go in and open those windows up myself. Give us a second to load. And in order to light them, because they were not open. They were all just sealed up, I guess because of the way it was. But it wasn't that hard to go in and open these. You can see there, you can see the light coming through the back there. These are all opened up now and ready for lighting. But yeah, I had to make so much of a modification to the hull here itself. I may be able to do it to where I can offer this as an aftermarket and just have it drop in place here. The bridge, BC deck. The BC deck is pretty much integrated into this section, but again, I might be able to do that as a separate piece. If I can do these upgrades or these accurizing parts as a separate piece, then I'll look at doing that. But it's right now my main concentration is making these modifications, getting this model put together so I can have it done. I would like to have it done for Wonderfest. I don't know if I'll have the time to get it done by then. I've got, this is February, midway through February now, and Wonderfest is in June, I believe. So we'll see if I can get it done in time for that, and then maybe I'll look at doing some of these accurizing parts and making them available. But it's not my priority right now. As a matter of fact, before I can even really delve into this, once I get done with the Big Bird and that's all finalized, I got to go back and finish up, for those of you that are waiting for me to finish it, I've got to go back and finish up the 1-350 bird of prey. And then I can delve into this. I can be more focused on getting this done and maybe doing these parts and offering them for accurizing afterwards. So anyway, guys, don't want this video to be too long-winded. Just wanted to give kind of an overview of what I'm looking at. I mean, like I said, I don't want to take away from the work that the creator, the modeler, put into building this 3D model. Maybe they did do some of the inaccuracies on purpose. I don't know. But for most of us, it's the accuracies are going to be something that keeps us from doing this model, unless you're willing to and able to put in the work to accurize it, which is what I'm trying to do. Anyway, guys, that's it. I don't want to make this too long-winded. I appreciate you for watching this. Hopefully this answers some of your questions. If you have any other questions about it, hit me up below, or hit me up on Facebook Messenger, or on my Facebook page, which is in the link below this video. And I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. But anyway, guys, thanks again for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.